1.
Awake thou that sleepest. Arise from the dead.
Read the Bible, you'll find out that God's not too happy with what's going on around us.
Redeem the time, because the days are evil.
The Bible has not changed.
Boldly proclaim the restoration and preservation of Christian values in America.
Satan has brainwashed a whole nation.
As goes the church, so goes the nation.
Nobody's convicted of anything anymore.
And now, here's Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Good morning, brothers and sisters in Christ and fellow earth travelers. Along with Mr. Anderson and Honor Mama Jeannie, you're listening to your Last Call, 2 hours of Christian talk radio with a sting. Brought to you by the Natural Family Foundation. As goes the family, so goes the nation. Our call-in number, if you wish to participate, is 614-423-4220. Our show can be accessed on the mmunited.org website if you've happened upon us by chance. I'm your host, B.J. Edwards, and this is my world. Is that my cue, Mr. Anderson?
You're on.
Am I on? July 4th, coming up this Wednesday. And we as a nation will be celebrating. So how about let's all start a new family tradition for July 4th, 2018.
What's that?
More on that in a bit.
More on that in a bit.
Yep.
All right.
And today we're blessed to have a return visit by author, writer, Pastor Roger Angis, who will help us examine the deep state phenomenon with a Russian twist. Or not. Last Call Christian Talk Radio with a sting. Join me, the Mayor of Realville, a.k.a. B.J. Edwards, and Mr. Anderson right here every Saturday morning, 10 o'clock a.m. till noon Eastern Standard Time. Call-in number if you want to talk to us is 614-423-4220. Access the program, mmunited.org, or just chat with us. If you want to listen by phone, by the way, you can call 605, and this is listen only, 605-475-0017. Supreme Court's been busy the past few weeks, Mr. Anderson.
They have been.
Mm-hmm.
They have been.
Yep. And as it ends, by the way, there's a Sunday call to all God's people. I caught this on the internet the other day. It's evidently a 10th annual call to fall. And it's just days away. Most Americans will celebrate our nation's political independence on July 4th. But before we fire up the grill and plan picnics and fireworks, churches across the land will take time to pray for America. This Sunday, July 1st, thousands will take at least 5 minutes, recommended, in their, this is Do Radio, folks, in their regular worship services, to spend time on their knees, seeking God's mercy and favor for our nation. Nothing is more important in America than our repentant prayers, plus action. God has given us the key to reversing both the moral decline and the cultural divide in this great nation. He can heal our land if we meet His simple conditions. If my people, who are called by my name, shall humble themselves, boy, that's a toughie. Pray, not too hard. And seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways. Ooh. Then will I hear from heaven, and forgive their sin, and heal their land.
Amen.
Supreme Court decisions this past week. It does look very, very interesting and very promising, to be honest with you. As it ended its term, the Supreme Court delivered a kidney punch to government unions, which was well-deserved, by the way, And the High Court also gave a major victory to crisis pregnancy centers by siding with the First Amendment against a California law that forced these centers to post notices up to 13 languages referring clients to free or low-cost abortions. If you go to an abortion clinic, do they tell you that, hey, there's an organization over here that will help you keep the baby? Oh, you don't speak English? Okay, we can tell you all about that in whatever language you want. How many Planned Parenthood facilities are doing that, folks? By the way, Liberty Counsel represented the 3 crisis pregnancy centers challenging the California forced speech law at the High Court. But there's something in there, a little nugget inside a couple of these cases that also have previously banned change counsel in California and New Jersey. So the opposition was trying to get a twofer here. 2 for the price of 1. And, of course, Liberty Counsel did challenge both laws. I think they're a pretty good group of folks, Liberty Counsel. And in their recent decision, the Supreme Court actually criticized the lower court opinions and rejected a lower level of professional speech. And what we hope this means is that the handwriting is on the wall that laws banning counseling, our good friend David Pickup, huh?
Yeah.
For unwanted or Carol Ayala and others, Linda Harvey, for unwanted same-sex attraction behavior or identity will fall under the First Amendment free speech clause. In other words, Massachusetts, California, and I think there's a couple, 3 other states, if you say, wait a minute, maybe he really isn't gay, or maybe he really isn't transgender. Can't say that. Cannot say that. At least that's what they want to do. We're going to be following closely, and I've already been in touch with our Texas change counselor, David Pickup, and we both recommend you stay tuned on this issue. The times, they are changing. We're going to be selecting a new Supreme Court judge. I say we, the President of the United States is, with the Senate's approval. And this could be a very harrowing task.
It'll be a challenge.
You know, when a Democrat wants to put a pure 100%, 101% liberal on the Supreme Court, the loyal opposition closes their eyes and goes, okay, no problem, no problem. But when we want to put a 101% pure conservative on the court, they get borked, don't they? Sunday, when you pray that this nation, the people, our public opinion will be felt as supporting the president nominating a conservative, constitutionally based, and I'll add pro-life, pro-natural marriage, pro-objective. You know, when we compromise, for the socialists, it's how much of the truth are you willing to sacrifice? And for the right, it's how much of the truth are we willing to give up so people will like us. Supreme Court judges, the liberals are a lock, as I mentioned before, and conservatives a struggle. Conservatives trend to liberalism, by the way, like existing Judge Kennedy, who's leaving. And the liberals on the court, they don't change at all. What should be a compromise? Here's how we should compromise. How do we get to the truth the fastest? Not what piece of the truth are we willing to give up, but how can we get to truth the fastest? One person thinks this way, another, but both are trying to get or employ the truth in their efforts. Not so today. Emotions are in play, huh? Or should I say emotions are being played with. Truth, you see, has fallen in the streets. It almost sounds biblical, doesn't it, Mr. Anderson?
Yeah.
It cannot raise its head like a young child with meningitis. And folks, we cannot get to the truth, justice in the American way, by compromising it, the truth. Solomon got to the truth. Two women claimed to love the same baby. And Solomon said, okay, you both say you have the truth. Let's just split the truth up and divide it and be on our way. And I want you to think about when you compromise the truth, you're doing what Solomon recommended to do to that baby. And of course, the truth haters, in this case, trying to bring everyone down to her misery level, said, sure, cut the baby, the truth up, if you will. And the other one who loved the truth and loved the baby said, no, let it live. Let it live with that socialist, with that liberal. Sometimes it seems like a hard decision, but it really isn't. Oh, for a moment in time, it seems right, but in the end, it bears no fruit at all. Over the next few months, Americans are going to have an opportunity to get to the truth. On one side, you'll hear emotional appeals, threats and hand-wringing. On the other side, you will see defense of the truth. At least I pray that's what we see. And sadly, it would be defense, not an offense, by the way. We wait, pray, and hope. Wait, with the only energy we exposed is tapping our foot in impatience. Not for the truth, mind you, but for something to happen. We prayed, so it should be so, right? Hoping beyond hope that God will make our fields grow without planting. Other than doing a rain dance, of course. Or praying for rain. The opportunity I speak of is, of course, the selection of our next Supreme Court judge. And please, I know the Supreme Court should not have that much power, but it is what it is. And yes, never Trumpers, Donald Trump is a creep to you, an unholy, imperfect man who speaks at times in harsh truth. Unsweetened, but he is the man that will be tapping the truth or compromise on the shoulder. It's up to you. All Americans, Trump haters alike. Will the truth win out or die for lack of a second? Everybody needs to be in this game, folks. Yes, it's more complicated than that, but your input could make a huge difference. Huge difference. And think about it. Draw that analogy between Solomon and the baby and what our representatives, our servants, are going to be doing with the truth. Because this is an opportunity for America to examine who we are, what we're about, what we believe in, and whether we really do want an objective government or a subjective, suppressive, take away all your rights, oligarchy, dictatorship, whatever you want to call it. The choice is ours. And hopefully, we'll make the right choice. When we come back, hate, hate, hate. Emotions, emotions, emotions. And then we're going to talk about a proposed national change. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. This is your last call. Hope you're all looking forward to a great 4th. Fireworks. Greased poles, greased pigs. You remember all that, Mr. Anderson?
Grease poles?
Yep.
No. You have to school me on that.
Maybe it was Southern Ohio was limited to. B.J. Edwards along Mr. Anderson, your last call.
There's a
I've got.
Oh, you know what? I have to turn that
Oh,
back on.
with BJ Edwards on WTVOradio.com.
Ah, yes. Get that resume updated, Mr. Anderson.
I'm a Russian. I've been Russian today, and I'm not all together.
That makes two of us. If we get through this.
Some of my parts are still out in the Jeep. Oh, here's our special song for today. Are you ready for that?
Yeah.
All right.
Independence Day, 2018.
I want to start that over. I don't know why it...
You're not awake yet, Mr. Anderson.
Oh, you know, bear with us. This is live radio.
Lewis. One question was raised about
This is a
how
Marine.
we teach our young people,
I didn't know they
and
must be Gomer
I'm a
Pyle.
former Marine, and I became
sing.
aware that there are two verses, and we need to hear the second verse, which says, "Oh, thus be it ever, when free men shall stand between their loved homes and the war's desolation, blessed with victory and peace, may the heaven rescued land praise the power that has made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must when our cause it is just, and this be our motto: in God is our trust, and the star-spangled banner in triumph shall wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Yeah. America, America.
That song, every time I hear that, it tears me up. Tears me up. Hits me more than the regular verse.
I got you, brother. I got you. I just got your message from 2 days ago on my Verizon phone.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Hey, Time Magazine. Fake news, right? They've made it a mission. This is from the Babylon Bee, by the way.
Oh boy.
Time Magazine admits cover of Trump punting a crying immigrant child may have been slightly misleading. Shortly after publishing a cover of President Trump punting a crying immigrant child up into the air, editors of Time Magazine admitted that they have lightly edited the photo using Adobe Photoshop, and it does not perfectly reflect reality. Time staffers stated they value truth and honesty in all their reporting, and so they apologize for the slightly misleading photo of the president booting the small child, sending her flying. After reviewing the criticism of our cover, we'll admit to touching up the photo a little bit, and that the image of Trump kicking a weeping toddler several yards away may not represent events as they actually occurred with 100% accuracy, an editorial review board member said Friday. Rest assured that we're reviewing our internal processes that led to the not quite so accurate photo being published on the cover. And it will not happen again. At publishing time, Time had shown off its next cover, which will feature President Trump utilizing an infinity gauntlet to wipe out half the life of the universe. Whew, the press. A lot of talk, and I've mentioned this before, about a civil war. And, folks, we are in a civil war. You know who this benefits? It's interesting. The news media, the mainstream media, the lamestream media, whatever you want to call them, fake media, they have been pushing, even before Donald Trump got elected, but once they found out he was going to get elected, they pushed even harder to destroy Donald Trump. And in the process, if it happens to take down the nation, so what? It's for a good cause. Every day, I talk to you about my favorite morning program, Two Witches and a Warlock, CBS Morning News. But it doesn't make any difference. CNN, ABC, NBC, they're all the same. It's all the same rhetoric, hate, driving your emotions up till Americans are at each other's throats. This benefits not Americans, but our adversaries. And okay, Russia's an adversary. Do you think that they're not enjoying this? If, and there's no proof of it, by the way, if they didn't mess with the election, but were smart enough to plant the seed in Hillary Clinton or some of the other progressives, which is very close to a communist, by the way, if they did, then they're very smart because they are dividing the dickens out of America. Folks, Donald Trump won the election. He's president. And y'all need to get over it. But lib conservatives, lib journalists, conservatives, get ready. We're sending bombs soon. This is from the far left, and it's only just a beginning, folks. They will not let go of this. They don't care. Their goal is to destroy anything that smells, looks, or tastes conservative. Anything, all things, and especially Christians. Americans have been repulsed by liberal tantrums in recent days. A restaurant owner kicking out White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders. California Democrat Maxine Waters calling on her followers to physically harass President Donald Trump's cabinet members. But now a writer from a leftist website, indirectly owned by Univision, that's foreign, if you would, Mexican, is predicting actual terrorist violence ahead. And he's relishing the idea of bombs exploding in American cities. This is all going to get more extreme, and it should, he says. We are living in extreme times, wrote Hamilton Nolan, senior writer for Splinter News. Very appropriately named, wouldn't you say, Mr. Anderson?
Yes, sir.
The harm that's being done to us all by the people in the American government is extreme, a.k.a. Donald Trump, a.k.a. conservatives. Republicans, I don't know whether that's an oxymoron anymore, Republicans and conservatives. Read a recent history book. The U.S. had thousands of domestic bombings per year in early 1970s. This is what happens when citizens decide en masse that their political system is corrupt, racist, and unresponsive. Driving up emotions here, aren't we? The people out of power have only just begun to flex their dissatisfaction. The people out of power have only just begun to flex their dissatisfaction. Can't win the election? The day will come sooner than you all think when the Trump administration officials will look back fondly on the time when all they had to worry about was getting hollered at a Mexican restaurant. Peter Fonda, recently, remember him?
Oh, brother. And his nice sister, Hanoi Jane.
Yes. And Meathead. Peaceably assembly for redress of grievances. What does that mean? Burning fires at universities? breaking windows, keeping people from exercising their First Amendment rights. The most telling part of Nolan's diatribe is that it isn't that far out of the mainstream of liberal thinking. First of all, Splinter News isn't some raggedy bi-weekly magazine put out by East European socialists in a basement in Brooklyn. It's owned by one of the largest media corporations going. Second, it's not out of line with what the Democratic Party is embracing these days, no matter what protesters Maxine Waters is now offering. What you got there, Mr. Anderson?
Sorry, I was testing to make sure we were broadcasting.
Okay. And now, 25 minutes into the show, you're now just checking to see if we're broadcasting?
Well, this is on a new thing. People don't know about it yet.
Come on, I get to make fun of you. That's part of what I do.
Well, okay, and I'll make fun back.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a new player, and it'll be in action soon, and
cool.
We need to let our listeners know about it eventually here.
Great.
This is the first time I got to test it.
We were talking about the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Maxine Waters. And what she's offering about
Peter Fonda.
How she has nothing to do with the way people decide to protest. Nobody who heard his words last Sunday could have been mistaken about the kind of confrontation she was calling for. And no matter what kind of patina House Speaker Nancy Pelosi tried to put on it, there's no blaming Trump for this kind of vitriol. Do you expect a wave of leftist terrorism in the USA? What's also telling, though, is how little the leftists like Nolan understand the politics and history they parrot. There's no doubt that the 1970s were radical years for the United States. There's also no doubt that the decade represented a total political catastrophe for the left. After the Watergate scandal brought down the Nixon presidency, the best Democrats could answer with was Jimmy Carter, whose 4 years in office were the worst for American president until Barack Obama was sworn in 2009. Please, progressive, socialist, soon-to-be communist, use your head. Think this through before you try to respond to this. What followed the endless division of the hate-filled 70s wasn't a communist revolution in the country. It was the Reagan Revolution. Whatever idiot fantasizes progressives like to engage in, the reality is the vast majority of America, of people in the American United States, including the vast majority of those who are here illegally, are a lot more interested in making a good life for themselves and their families than they are in running the country into some kind of third world socialist utopia hellhole. Those who forget the past are destined to repeat it in the future. The final reality is that whatever misery leftist violence can inflict, and there's no doubt that it can be a lot, it will never defeat a country founded and revolutionary devoted to the idea of individual freedom, not some leftist hack writer's idea of a false revolution. Hate, hate, hate. You hear it, you feel it. In your family. How's that working out for you? The family greeting you with open arms or questioning eyes? Are you one of them there conservatives, Christians, constitutionalists? That old dog-eared document that needs to be changed?
I think it was mentioned in the Bible that our household would be distraught.
The call-in number to talk with moi is 614-423-4220. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call for our new listeners. Thanks for piping in this morning. We appreciate you. We're going to get to our subject for the hour, the new nationalism. I think you're going to like it. I think you're going to believe in it. At least I hope you do. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call.
keeping you informed. This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
One of our listeners says, why do you take 3 steps to get there? Liberal, socialist, communist. It is what we're talking about, folks. 614-423-4220.
And they hide behind the term progressive.
Yes, you can call them what you want. But they're trying to destroy the United States of America and what it stands for. The nationalism, the flag, God bless America, right? We hold these truths to be, but do we really? Look at the sore losers around.
Inalienable.
Yep. You know, you got the shooter in the Capitol Gazette newspaper, with a shotgun, long gun they called it. Jeez, they never stop. Killing 5 people and seriously injuring several others. He, of course, was a Donald Trump fan, right? It was the press he went after, right? He'd had enough of fake news. Boy, did they ever want you to believe that? Did they ever pause and hope that you were believing that, or even questioning it? And I know they were. Let's just say what happened. A radical went after the press. Well, that'd have to be a Trump supporter, wouldn't it? We found out differently, though, right? It was personal. He held a grudge. Violent rhetoric and confrontational political activism are ramping up across America. Illegal entrance, separating children from their parents, emotion, heart. And detention facilities are attempting to shut down immigrant enforcement by occupying ICE offices. They're trying to destroy the people that are guarding our borders. They tried it in D.C., by the way, but found they were blocked by a line of officers, and ironically, a fence that kept them from getting in. There might be a lesson here somewhere. Warning: the linked story contains verbatim quotes from the protest organizers' intellectual leaders, so be aware that there are multiple uses of the F word. That's when they talk. If you go on the internet, Facebook, and you start talking with a with a liberal, progressive, once you bring up the truth, the first thing you're going to see are F words and S words and accusations. It's incredible. Fences, borders, they are necessary. You have walls around your house, right? Oh, of course we don't. Of course, yes you do. Well, we have a fence in the yard. That's not what I'm talking about. You generally have 4 walls in your home, do you not?
Yeah. I like that.
Do you leave your door open? Do you leave your door open? You ever been to Mexico, Mr. Anderson, where all these people are coming from, supposedly?
Yeah, I have been.
Do they have walled families there?
Well, it's interesting. At least in the areas I visited, not in the tourist areas, I went across with missionaries and visited areas of a lot of poverty. And every house, whether it was a cardboard structure or a wealthy home, they'd be next door to each other. You'd see a rich home next to a poor guy's house, but all of them had a wall or a fence. And it wasn't just a backyard fence to keep the dogs in. No, it was completely around their space. And even the poorest of the poor, gathered materials to build fences around their little space.
Families.
Mm-hmm. Keep their family in, protect. I don't know, but that seemed to be their culture. And the wealthy, their fences are more like walls.
Yeah. And people with guns guarding those walls.
Well, I didn't notice that, but I wouldn't be surprised.
If you're in Mexico, you have to notice that. It's there's a purpose, and this is biblical, by the way. The Bible talks about borders and not messing with them. That is biblical. And the Bible talks about strangers as well. But it also talks about, and you don't hear this from the liberal, no, not news media. No, not politicians. From the socialist churches. Huh? They're promoting socialism, communism.
Social justice churches.
Mm-hmm.
They're all over the place. They don't even recognize themselves.
Right. But you have to assimilate. And that's biblical.
It is.
You follow the rules of the land. You don't come over from a foreign country under the guise of peaceful or religion or whatever it is you're coming over as. You don't come over.
Don't bring your trash here.
You know, how many of you take a vacation to Saudi Arabia or some of the to some of the other countries? Oh yeah, you go to Mexico, but you go to a guarded community. You don't go into Mexico. No, because you ain't coming back if you do.
That's yeah. I tell you, when I was there, I was scared. I really was scared because
Cartels.
Well, and I knew of people who didn't get back across the border. Americans visiting, college kids, whatever, thought they'd go over there and have a good time,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't come home. And you don't hear about that here in Ohio, but when you're down there, you know about it, and they talk about it.
It's absolutely amazing how brainwashed we are as Americans. And it's they take a piece of the Bible. They'll quote the Bible when it suits them. And they can take something away from you like your personal sovereignty. They'll quote it left and right. Satan does know the Bible, doesn't he? Yeah, he does know the Bible. And he knows how to use it and when to use it. But you've got to be smart enough. And you've got to teach your children to be smart enough and talk to your neighbors. Because this is an all-out invasion. And the first thing they're doing is dividing us as a nation. And I'd say that's pretty much complete, which is sad.
I was discussing with a lefty the other day about climate change. He said, well, God said to take care of the land. And I said, well, do you believe God well enough to follow all his statutes?
Just it's cafeteria, mister. It's kind of like today's church. It's a cafeteria. I'll take this, I'll take that. Oop, doop, doop. No, don't want that. Nah, adultery? Nah, I'm still thinking about that one, Lord. Okay.
I still like my girlfriend.
Yeah, yeah.
Boyfriend.
And we're this is just amazing. It's just amazing. Last call, students. Is the legalization of marijuana a good thing? Is this the message we want to send to our children? According to Forbes magazine, supporting marijuana decriminalization, federal cannabis rescheduling, and industrial hemp is now the official position of the Republican Party of Texas. We read that to you the other day. Do you really want this sort of thing happening in America? Do we not already? Oh, I hear you libertarians out there. Sorry. Don't be pointing your finger at me. I'm telling you the truth. We don't need another inebriate in America. We got plenty, thank you very much. We just don't need it.
The big problem I have with it being on the ballot is it draws voters to the wrong side of the fence.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's how it's being used.
Yeah, they're smart.
And so, smart. yeah. If you oppose it, then, because they're looking for the young voters and they're going for that. And when you're voting on one issue, you're going to be blindsided.
What's going to hold this country together? No, seriously, what is going to hold it?
Jesus.
Well, yeah.
I know.
Yeah. No. But he does. He does work through people.
He does.
And you and I would agree that he works through families.
Well, it is the only thing that will hold a family together. It's the only thing that will hold a family together.
What's that?
God.
The truth.
Jesus.
Yeah.
The truth.
Yeah.
And they, our families are so divided. Well, the family is divided because some believe and some don't. And why is that?
That's purposeful. And you will be tested. You will be tested daily, hourly. And there's a war that's going on for your soul.
Absolutely.
And the soul of a nation. God judged nations. I never really understand why. Now I'm starting to understand why. God does a collective thing. If you take a real hard look at it. When he judges nations, he's judging them collectively. Good kings, bad kings, right? And what happened to those nations with good kings and bad kings? Regardless of the form of government, okay? You don't have to have a king to be judged as a nation. As a matter of fact, I think it's a little more pure here in the United States because it's we, the people, which is more appropriate.
And
We, the people. Go ahead.
More responsibility
Yep.
on us
We're being judged.
to serve the Lord as a nation.
Well, what we're trying to do is kind of draw something out here for you before we do our new nationalism. Because I'm sorry. Well, I'm not really sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, are you really sorry?
No.
No.
Well, I'm
Say it.
I don't want to say disappointed. I think it's a good thing to have nationalism, and I think the United States, as designed, is something that we should salute. And maybe even put our hand over our heart and swear allegiance to. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. Having said that, there might be something better that we can do in addition to that would help this nation out and maybe get us out of this hole we dug ourselves. And it does relate to the family. It does relate to the family. Let me define nationalism for you. I think, well, you know what? We're going to have to take a break here shortly. Why don't we go ahead and take a break, Mr. Anderson, and then I'm going to define nationalism.
You're going to define nationalism.
And then make my recommendation. Liberal senator blasted president yesterday for moving U.S. embassy to Jerusalem. Trump policies impede Middle East peace. Feinstein charged the USA Today op-ed. She even blamed Trump for Palestinian terror, saying he incited violence by recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Really? I hate the misuse of the truth. P.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, will define nationalism and promote a new one. Back in a flash.
We huddle close,
America.
hang on to a dream. On the post, on the plane.
Last Call with B.J. Edwards. Real talk about real life on WTVOradio.com.
Real life.
Don't it seem so far away?
B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. Several days ago, I left a meeting at a hotel, and I desperately gave myself a personal TSA pat-down. I was looking for my keys, of course. They were not in my pockets. A quick search in the meeting room revealed nothing. Suddenly, I realized I must have left them in the car. Frantically, I headed for the parking lot. My wife had scolded me many times for leaving the keys in the ignition. My theory is that the ignition is the best place not to lose them. Her theory is that the car will be stolen. As I burst through the door, I came to the terrifying conclusion that my wife's theory was right. The parking lot was empty.
Oh, no.
My car was gone. I immediately called the police. I gave them my location, confessed that I had left my keys in the car, and that it had been stolen. Then I made the most difficult call of all. Honey, I stammered, I left my keys in the car and it's been stolen. Yeah, there was a period of silence. I thought the call had been dropped, but then I heard her voice say, "Are you kidding me?" She said in a stressed voice, "I dropped you off." Now it was time for me to be silent. Embarrassed, I said, "Well, come and get me." To which my wife responded, "Certainly, that is, I will as soon as I convince this cop I didn't steal your car." Nationalism. Nationalism.
A nation.
Loyalty and a devotion to a nation, especially a sense of national consciousness. Exalting one nation above all others and placing primary emphasis on promotion of its culture and interest as opposed to those of other nations or supernatural groups. That's the definition of nationalism. I pledge allegiance to the flag, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong about it. But how about this? Just as a suggestion, how about this? I pledge allegiance to the family of the United States of America and to the church for which it stands. One family, one church, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, what church, BJ? Right? That's the first thing he goes, what church? It'd be the church of the family.
The body of Christ.
The church of the natural family, of nature's family. The family that was designed by nature and supported by nature. That church, folks. You want to divide on that? You can't. Because it's natural. That's the church. And the church of objectivity. I think I've told you before that I came to the knowledge of the truth by trying to disprove it. Personal flaw, but that's the way I operate. And as I try to disprove it, and I challenge all my progressive communist friends to do the same, as I attacked the truth, it infected me. Like a virus, but a good virus. It affected me. If we focused as much on the family this July 4th, 2018, as much as, I would say even more so, but at least as much as we do on the flag and the allegiance to our nation, what kind of a country would we end up with?
Family friendly.
Natural. Not what we as man in our nature want it to be. Oh, so I can get away with this or I can get away with that. What really is natural? And of course we are talking about one man and one woman, one blue and one pink if you would, in a lifelong committed relationship with their biological children and in some cases adopted children. What's wrong with that? 614-423-4220. Come tell me. What's wrong with that? Where's the flaw? The fly in that ointment. Loyalty and devotion to a family, to the family. A sense of national consciousness. Focus on the concept of the natural. And I know. We're probably only talking about 5% of the families in America today, 10% max. But that doesn't change the concept. And I think it does expose the problem.
You know, I was just thinking while you're talking about that, and I'm looking at this little clip that we talked about playing about the Declaration of Independence
Okay.
and the signers.
Mm-hmm.
And what these people sacrificed, it took the family, and you'll hear that in this piece, how the families worked and lost together to form this nation. It was a family effort, one by one. 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence had families who supported their endeavor at the cost of everything they had. We don't have a clue, but
they gave their all.
They gave everything.
They gave their all in form of families. Well, you're getting that keyed up, Mr. Anderson. Again, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of... I pledge allegiance to the family of the United States of America and to the church for which it stands. We've already defined what that church is. One family. We defined that. One church. One nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all. I read a stat from westernjournal.com the other day. It reminded me once again that families are really the greatest form of health care for everyone. The stat, well... The new study found that grandmothers who babysit their grandkids are less likely to suffer a number of mental health problems, like from dementia and depression. I guess the study was written by the overworked moms who need a break.
Interesting.
Yeah. Go ahead and play that, Mr. Anderson, and we'll have our special guest coming up after, on the second hour, Roger Angis.
But for any eve of the 4th of July, I, Paul Harvey, do herewith bequeath unto you something to remember. You may not be able to quote one line from the Declaration of Independence at this moment. Henceforth, you'll always be able to quote at least one line. It's in the last paragraph where you will recall when I remind you. It says, "We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor." In the Pennsylvania State House that's now called Independence Hall in Philadelphia, the best men from each of the colonies sat down together. This was a very fortunate hour in our nation's history, one of those rare occasions in the lives of men when we had greatness to spare. These were men of means, well-educated. 24 were lawyers and jurists. 9 were farmers, owners of large plantations. On June 11, a committee sat down to draw up a Declaration of Independence. We were going to tell the British fatherland no more rule by redcoats. Below the dam of ruthless foreign rule, the stream of freedom was running shallow and muddy, and we were going to light a fuse to dynamite that dam. This pact, as Burke later put it, was a partnership between the living and the dead and the yet unborn. There was no bigotry, there was no demagoguery in this group. All had shared hardship. Jefferson finished a draft of the document in 17 days. Congress adopted it in July, and so much is familiar history. But now, King George III had denounced all rebels in America as traitors. Punishment for treason was hanging. The names now so familiar to you from the several signatures on that Declaration of Independence, the names were kept secret for 6 months, for each knew the full meaning of that magnificent last paragraph in which his signature pledged his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor. 56 men placed their names beneath that pledge. 56 men knew when they signed that they were risking everything. They knew if they won this fight, the best they could expect would be years of hardship in a struggling nation. And if they lost, they'd face a hangman's rope. But they signed the pledge. And here is the documented fate of that gallant 56. Carter Braxton of Virginia, wealthy planter, trader, saw his ships swept from the seas. To pay his debt, he lost his home and all of his properties and died in rags. Thomas Lynch Jr., who signed that pledge, was a third-generation rice grower, aristocrat, large plantation owner. After he signed, his health failed. His wife and he set out for France to regain his failing health. Their ship never got to France, was never heard from again. Thomas McKean of Delaware was so harassed by the enemy that he was forced to move his family 5 times in 5 months. He served in Congress without pay, his family in poverty and in hiding. Vandals looted the properties of Ellery and Clymer and Hall and Gwinnett and Walton and Hayward and Rutledge, and Middleton. Thomas Nelson Jr. of Virginia raised $2 million on his own signature to provision our allies, the French fleet. After the war, he personally paid back the loans, wiped out his entire estate, and he was never reimbursed by his government. In the final battle for Yorktown, he, Nelson, urged General Washington to fire on his, Nelson's, own home, which was occupied by Cornwallis. It was destroyed. Thomas Nelson Jr. had pledged his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor.
Who would do that today?
The Hessians seized the home of Francis Hopkinson of New Jersey. Francis Lewis had his home and everything destroyed, his wife imprisoned. She died within a few months. Richard Stockton, who signed that declaration, was captured, mistreated, his health broken to the extent that he died at 51. His estate was pillaged. Thomas Hayward Jr. was captured when Charleston fell. John Hart was driven from his wife's bedside while she was dying. Their 13 children fled in all directions for their lives. His fields and grist mill were laid waste. For more than a year, he lived in forests and caves and returned home after the war to find his wife dead, his children gone, his properties gone, and he died a few weeks later of exhaustion and a broken heart. Lewis Morris saw his land destroyed, his family scattered. Philip Livingston died within a few months from the hardships of the war. John Hancock, history remembers best due to a quirk of fate rather than anything he stood for, that great sweeping signature attesting to his vanity, towers over the others, one of the wealthiest men in New England. And yet he stood outside Boston one terrible night of the war, and he said, "Burn Boston, though it makes John Hancock a beggar, if the public good requires it."
Wonder how many of these were Christians?
But he, too, lived up to the pledge. Of the 56, few were long to survive. 5 were captured by the British and tortured before they died. 12 had their homes from Rhode Island to Charleston sacked, looted, occupied by the enemy, or burned. 2 lost their sons in the army. 1 had 2 sons captured. 9 of the 56 died in the war from its hardships or from its more merciful bullets. I don't know what impression you had of the men who met that summer in Philadelphia. But I think it's important that we remember this about them. They were not poor men. They were not wild-eyed pirates. These were men of means. They were rich men, most of them, and had enjoyed much ease and luxury in their personal living. Not hungry men, certainly not terrorists, not irresponsible malcontents, not fanatical incendiaries. These men were prosperous men, wealthy landowners. They were substantially secure in their prosperity. They had everything to lose. But they considered liberty, and this is as much as I shall say of it. They had learned that liberty is so much more important than security, that they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. And they fulfilled their pledge. They paid the price, and freedom was born.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
And we're going to compromise the truth. These folks, yeah, mostly white Christians, by the way, gave their all. You heard about the children. You heard about the homes. Fortunes lost, gone. So we could have the ability today to make choices for ourselves. But those choices need to be objective, and they need to preserve that liberty that these men and women and children fought and died for. Independence did not come cheap, and we shouldn't lessen it by compromising. God help us. God help us all. When we come back from the break, Roger Angis should be joining us. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. Skype up.
Seems like we've lost our way. Where did we go astray? The lies that we've been told have put our dreams on hold. And you know, if we don't watch out, we could all go under and drown. Yeah, the future depends on us.
Faith, discussion, and so much more. Last Call with B.J. Edwards on WTVOradio.com.
Make America great again.
614-423-4220. B.J. Edwards along Mr. Anderson, your last call. Kind of stunning what the founders gave.
Oh, it is. And I don't know how you can listen to that and not think.
Well, but they were slave owners. They were slave owners. They were sinners. Come on, Mr. Anderson. Give me a break here, okay? They were imperfect.
Oh, well, darn. There was some imperfection here and there.
Yep.
You know, and some of those slaves didn't want to leave those areas, their owners, when they were allowed to. You know, they were taken care of, and their families were taken care of with them.
Yeah.
I mean, we hear about the evil side of it much more than we hear any good stories. Because if you try to say something good about it, you get vehement hate thrown at you in the face and be, what? You know what I mean?
Yep. They can't afford to have any objective truth on our side. You can't have it there. You cannot prop yourself up with that. By the way, Brother Roger there. By the way, Mr. Anderson, I didn't tell you that, but we here at Last Call are now an official certified red pill distributor. Yeah, that's a fact. That's a fact. We were really blessed this morning. We've got Roger Angis, the founder of buildingthetruth.org, an organization designed to draw attention to the need of not just free speech for churches, but disseminating correct information through responsible journalism. Roger has published for 12 years the American Intelligence Briefing. If you don't get it, you should. It's very interesting. An internet newsletter for keeping up on the news most agencies don't report, and has written 3 books on the founding of America and Christian roots that established our form of government. The most recent is Defining America's Exceptionalism. Pastor Roger Angis, welcome to Last Call.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
It's always a pleasure having you with us, brother. We've been talking about, we talked early on in the program about compromising and about the new Supreme Court judge that's going to be appointed by Donald Trump, and how we're expected to compromise the truth, sacrifice the truth, so we can get along with our progressive, socialist, communist friends across the aisle. What do you think about that, Roger?
Well, we can't compromise.
Roger, yes, we can. That's all we do. That's what we're good at.
Not when it comes to that. We
I agree.
Can't Our founding fathers were very explicit in the type of people that we need to have running our government. In my book, Defining America's Exceptionalism, I go through and I talk about specifically the judicial aspect of it. The Supreme Court is one of the most, well, it's the highest court in the land, but the Supreme Court, according to our founders, was the least of all three branches of the government.
Amen.
Thomas Jefferson was had warned us of what could possibly happen. We could end up with an oligarchy, and today we have an oligarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And when Barack Obama nominated Elena Kagan, a video came up and showed Elena Kagan having a conversation with somebody and saying that, the courts are not supposed to legislate, but we do it all the time. Ha, 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 ha. And, that, in my opinion, should have disqualified her for any judgeship in any way, shape, or form. Our founding fathers were very explicit on a person's character. Elena Kagan, when she was an inspector general, was the one who put together the defense for Obamacare if and when it goes to court, because they knew it was going to go to court. And because she did that, when she was sitting on the court, she was required by law to recuse herself.
Absolutely, I remember that.
And she did not do that either. So the person that sits on that Supreme Court has to be a person of extreme integrity. And as far as Elena Kagan goes, we do not have that. Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when they made the decision that overturned Texas's sodomy law, Elena Ginsburg said that they used international law to do it. Well, they're sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States, not international law. And 5 justices used international law to adjudicate a case for the United States. All 5 of those justices violated their oath, and all 5 are still sitting on the Supreme Court.
Roger,
I'm not saying. Go ahead.
You said that the founders were very explicit about the character. What were they looking for?
Well,
were they looking for Christians? Were they looking for?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me. They were definitely looking for Christians. I mean, a lot of people say that. Our founders, they kept their religion separate from their government, and they did not, because they used their religion to establish our government.
Yes, sir. That's an important point. That's a great point. Great point.
And then one of our justices, let's see, I think it was John Jay. I'm looking up, going through some stuff here, but.
It's while you're looking there. While you're looking there, it's kind of like if you want somebody to interpret a Chinese manuscript, you want somebody that's familiar with Chinese, right? And if you want somebody to run our government, you're going to have somebody with a Christian background, because that's exactly the gasoline that they wanted to put into that tank.
Well, there's two quotes I want to give. I found the first one, which was from, now this is from John Jay. John Jay was our first Chief Justice of the United States.
Right.
Providence has given to our people the choice of their rulers, and it is the duty as well as the privilege and interest of our Christian nation to select and prefer Christians for their rulers. So when somebody says we're not a Christian nation, which Barack Obama did, stated
no longer, yeah,
that we're no longer a Christian nation, even though 80% of the people in the United States classify themselves as Christians. Where did he dig up that little piece of information? And John, I believe it was John Adams, stated that, and I'm looking for that right now. Here it is. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. So the way our government was established was under Christian principles, using Christian principles, based on Christian principles, and to try to run it under any other form of ideology or form of government don't work. And that's what's happening now. We have people in government that are trying to run this government as a humanistic
secular humanist. Yeah.
And we're not, secular human. And we're not. We're a Christian nation. And that is why Alexis de Tocqueville came over here in, I think it was 1832, to find out why the heck America had become such a force on the earth in such a short period of time.
It is curious.
It's curious. Yeah, he traveled all over this country, and the thing that he established was that this nation does not separate its religion from its daily life. It doesn't separate its religion from its business life, and it doesn't separate its religion from the government. That's what he found in the 2 years that he was here.
Roger, you're a pastor.
Right.
It's the duty of the clergy to accommodate their discourses to the times, to preach against such sins that are most prevalent, and recommend such virtues that are most wanted. If public spirit is much wanted, should they not indicate this great virtue? If the rights and duties of Christian magistrates, which our magistrates are, and subject to disputed, should they not explain them, show their nature, ends, limitations, and restrictions? We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, maybe you can get a little more detail in terms of what role the church has in America. Separation of church and state, really? This is B.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson. Your last call. We'll be back with Roger Angis, Pastor Roger Angis, in about 1 minute. Again, B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. Hang in there, Roger. You'll be able to hear us, or you might not be able to hear us.
Okay.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with B.J. Edwards.
Trying to kill our Constitution.
B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. We're on the phone with Pastor Roger Angis, founder of buildingthetruth.org. I ran across Roger through a friend of mine and has been reading him. I read those emails about once or twice a week. They're very intense that you send out, Roger. I guess please give us kind of a link where people can get those daily emails, because I think they're really, really informative. If you have that handy. I've got buildingtruth.org. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So
I started doing those daily emails just as something to inform my friends and family of what's going on. Because I started paying a little more attention to what's going on in the world, and the more you pay attention, the more sometimes you wish you hadn't, because you end up learning a whole bunch of stuff that you really didn't want to know. But the one thing, Patrick Henry made a comment, and I'm going to pull this one out too, that, when it comes to knowing the truth, as opposed to being told a lie, I'm going to see if I can find it here. He believed that it's better to know what the truth is so that you can prepare for what's coming down the road, or what could possibly come down the road, than to have it just surprise you. And so many people are walking around with blinders on so that I don't want to know that. I don't want to know that. And then the next thing you know, yeah, really. It's been happening for the last 50 years. Hello.
Yeah. I didn't even notice.
I just did an article. It's a three-piece article. The last one's coming out tomorrow on News with Views. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about the people that have been pushing for a new world order.
Yes, sir.
And how long it's been in the works. And I've had people tell me that's impossible. It couldn't have been in the works that long. And one of them is the Illuminati. And what people don't understand was that organization was around and trying to influence America in George Washington's day.
I believe that. I believe that.
Then we've got the Bilderbergs, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, and what I found out was that every single solitary person in the Jimmy Carter administration, including Jimmy Carter, was either a member of the Trilateral Commission or the Council on Foreign Relations, most of them both. The founder of the Trilateral Commission is the big new Brzezinski, the father of Mika Brzezinski that's on Morning Joe.
Well, she's that conservative host, isn't she?
As far as Satan goes, yes.
Yeah, yes. She conserves that. She conserves that. Roger, I want to get into that discussion, but there's two things I really want covered here. Is number one, we're in a cultural war, but we're in a public opinion war as well, and we're losing that war miserably. I understand and I acknowledge the Bilderbergers. I acknowledge all the other the huge enemies that we have. But I still believe that public opinion rules the day in America, and I think they spend most of their time and resources affecting that, not trying to, but affecting that. And over a period of time, over 50 years or 100 years or 300 years, it just keeps accumulating and adding up if you don't chip away at it and try to destroy it. How do we, given the situation we're in right now, Roger, and I know you're a historian, but I also know that you watch what's going on in the political environment today. How do we win this battle? How do we defeat the enemy? Because if we don't, America is going to go down, and when America goes down, the rest of the world follows quickly. How do we stop this? What do we do?
Well, it's the old adage that you've heard probably 1,000 or maybe even 1,000,000 times before. America needs Jesus. We need to literally go back to our religious roots. One of the books that I wrote, matter of fact, the first book that I wrote was Bringing America Back to the Religious Roots. And we've got to get back to what made America great. And what made America great was the fact that we lived, or like I stated just a little while ago, that what Alexis de Tocqueville discovered when he came to America, we have to live every aspect of our life by God's principles.
I agree with you, Roger. I totally agree with you. Who's going to be engineering this, though? Who's going to have that time? Who has the time machine that can take us back there? The devil's in the details. Yep, I agree. We need to get back to objective truth, to Christianity. Absolutely. But how do we? Who are the leaders here that are going to take us back? What vehicle are we going to use to drive us back to where we need to go?
The same vehicle that drove us away.
Okay, and that is?
The preachers.
Ah, the pastors.
America is in the state and the condition that it is in today is because of the failure of the preachers to do what they're supposed to do.
If there's decay of conscience and the public press lacks moral discernment, the pulpit is responsible for it. If the church is degenerate and worldly and the world loses its interest in Christianity, the pulpit is responsible for it. If Satan rules in the halls of legislation, hello. And our politics become so corrupt that the very foundations of the government are ready to fall away, the pulpit is responsible for it. Is that what you're saying, Pastor?
That's exactly what I'm saying. In a nutshell, and it couldn't be described any better than that.
Yep.
Really can't.
Yep.
God's not going to judge America because of Barack Obama or because of any other, excuse my expression, left-wing moron. God's going to judge the church.
Yes, sir.
Because of the condition of America. And if America is going to get back to where it's supposed to be, it's going to be the church that takes us there. It was the church that had drug us away from that direction. And I think a whole lot of that, it has accelerated exponentially since 1954. I mean, I can get into some specifics, and I think I do in my book, Defining American Exceptionalism. The things that began to occur in America and get worse, such as divorce, the murder rate,
the pill,
teenage pregnancies, and all this kind of stuff started to increase when prayer was taken out of the school in 1962. All of those facts and figures were going down. Divorce was going down. We had very little out-of-wedlock pregnancies and all this kind of stuff. And violent crimes were actually going down. But when that 17-word prayer was taken out of the schools in 1962, all of that was reversed into continually getting worse and worse and worse. The people don't understand. A lot of people, they'll make a comment like, well, what you say is what you get. And there is 100% truth to that. Because when you're speaking, the only thing that's going to change anything in this world is the spoken word of God.
Roger,
now,
go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to...
Go ahead. Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah. Well, you can speak the words of Satan, if you will. And those things will happen. And it is going to change the world, but it's not going to change the world in a positive manner.
I agree.
Scripture tells us that the words of our mouth count. And we need to get back to that. We need to understand that and stop saying, a whole lot of things that rolls off our tongue anymore, without us even thinking about it.
Okay. One of the things that we run into that I see in America today is our government-run schools, I call them indoctrination centers, have taught the children that once you hear, and the news media does this, as well as the entertainment industry, and our government does it as well, the areas, the mountains of influence, if you will, have they have a lot of main courses that they service up, but one of the main courses they service up is that if you hear the word Jesus Christ, you hear the word Bible, you hear the word absolutes, that you turn that off. And they do. Our kids, 90% of our kids, go through government-run indoctrination centers, and they've been taught that for 12 years in a row. Some of them even before that. We talked to a lady a couple, 3 weeks ago that was teaching pre-kindergarten kids, 4 years old, 48 months, 4 years old, about sexual orientation. So they're indoctrinated for at least 12 years. So when you try to talk to them about, and I believe the word has power, but you got to be able to deliver that, Roger. And when you start talking to somebody about Jesus Christ or God or absolutes, they shut you down and give you the Heisman stiff arm. They never hear another word. They block you out. And that is a huge, huge deterrent to us getting our message out.
Well, it definitely is. And back in 1954, when the church got pulled out of the political arena,
Satan's so good.
Oh, yeah. The church complained a little bit, but they didn't do anything about it.
Drew a line in the sand and stepped back. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, they kind of did the line in the sand that Barack Obama did with Syria. Syria stepped over it, he just drew another red line. And then he stepped over it, and he drew another red line. And they've been doing that ever since. There's been a few churches that have, that have stood their ground on that. But what has happened, one of the most popular sermons until 1954 was a sermon concerning what a Christian should do in this election. And a preacher could stand in a pulpit on a Sunday morning and say, as a Christian, you can either vote for this person or you cannot vote for this person. Now, in reality, you can still do that today. You can, even under this Johnson gag order, you can stand in a pulpit and say, this is this party's platform. This is what this party stands for. And compare it to the principles of God. Now, I saw a preacher in 2016 on TV. He spent at least 4 weeks, maybe 5, before the election, and went over, and he had a copy of each party's political platform. And he went through that in detail. And when he got done at the end of that 4 to 5 weeks, he said, and he held up the Democrat Party's platform, and he had a front cover on that said the Democrat Party platform. He said, if you call yourself a Christian, you cannot vote for this party. You can still do that. But preachers are cowards today. If we had preachers like we had in the during the Revolutionary War, it would take about 5 years for this country to get turned around.
If we could keep them alive.
Defining them alive. Boy, yeah. In defining America's exceptionalism, it stated that it is the reason we had the Revolutionary War was because of the preachers. Everything we fought for, what was listed in the Declaration of Independence, the freedoms that we were demanding from England had been preached since about 1620 AD in America. Most of the militia leaders were preachers. When they went to, when the shot that was heard around the world in Lexington, at Bowling Green, in Kentucky, the men that were trained where that shot was fired was the preacher.
Yep, I agree, brother. We're going to have to take a quick break. We're with Pastor Roger Angis, and we're reading Pastors, the church's pedigree this morning. I want to get a little bit into the deep state, too, if we can. I know you've written a couple articles about it. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call.
Waiting on a plane. I overheard an old man tell a young soldier thanks.
Faith, discussion, and so much more. Last Call with B.J. Edwards on WTVOradio.com.
Last call, B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. If you'd like to talk to our guest, Roger Angis, Pastor Roger Angis, 614-423-4220. You can always access the program, mmunited.org, if you've happened upon us by chance. If you just want to listen to us, 605-475-0017. And if you're a YouTuber, just go to B.J. Edwards on Facebook, and you can find us there. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've had a interesting conversation so far this morning with Roger Angis, and I can talk about the pastors all day long, but I guess we need to identify one of the targets we have in Washington, D.C. I think you and I had talked about this quote-unquote Russian investigation where there is no victim, there is no crime, but we're going to invest. It's a criminal investigation now, I understand. Oh, dear God. We have no respect for words. But what is, in your mind, Roger, what is going on here with this investigation in Washington, D.C., this witch hunt, as I would look at it, and why is this continuing?
The only reason the reason it got started was because President Trump was elected. Now, I'm going to say something which may irritate some people, may shock some people, and I don't want to hear that, all this other kind of stuff. But during the campaign in Europe, George Soros was asked by interviewing him, do you think that Hillary Clinton is going to win the presidency? And what do you think? What kind of an effect do you think Trump is going to have? And he made the comment. He said, Trump may win the popular vote, but Hillary Clinton will win the Electoral College. That's already been decided.
Interesting.
Now that, when I heard that, being who I am and what I do, my ears went up. We have a deep state. Go back to FDR. This was 70 plus years ago, almost 80 years ago with FDR when he first got elected. He made the comment that presidents are selected, not elected. When you look at the presidents that we have had with extreme let me rephrase that. With almost no exceptions, except for Ronald Reagan, every single one has been a member of the Bilderbergs, the Illuminatis, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the Trilateral Commission.
And Donald Trump. He hasn't been a member of that, but he's been like a Ronald Reagan.
And Donald Trump, yeah. Now, if he had been a member, we wouldn't see this, what's going on today. Because he would have been one of the, these are the two that we will let you vote for.
One of them.
When you look at the 16, 17 people that were in the Republican Party, every single solitary one of them, except for Donald Trump, is a globalist. Every single one of them. Now, I was at the time when W was elected, I was a fan of W.
George W. Bush.
George W. Bush. I guess I probably should have clarified that. But halfway through the Obama administration, I come across an interview that HW did, and I found out that it was an interview that he had done with somebody, and I found out that HW and W have done everything they could to keep open borders. They don't want open borders. They're both globalists. I couldn't understand why George wouldn't close do something about the border. And realized why. The war that he started that took out Hussein, that was part of a globalist scenario. The deep state that we have one more quote here, if I may. And I've got it in my that I did the last couple of weeks.
We're speaking with Roger Angis, founder of buildingthetruth.org. He can be read on News with Views as well. Just Roger Angis, A-N-G-H-I-S?
G-H-I-S, yes.
Okay. Go ahead, please. I'm giving you time to find your information.
Okay. Yeah, this was an article by David Rockefeller. There was a comment in an address to the surprise, Trilateral Commission in June of 1991. We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected the promise of discretion, in other words, keeping quiet, for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subject to the bright lights of publicity during those years. But the world is now more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a one-world government. The supernatural sovereignty of intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national autodetermination practiced in past centuries. Now, this tells you that media, all the major medias have been involved in this as well. Now, somebody put together, and they had put it on YouTube, 30 different news stations, TV stations, in their newscasts on a particular subject. Didn't make any difference what subject it is, but it's all 30 of these newscasters, in speaking of this story, whatever it happened to be, because they did it with like 5 or 6 different subjects or stories that were out there. The report they gave was verbatim of what every other newscaster stated. All of them were worded exactly the same. When you figured 1,500 TV stations and 2,500 radio stations are all owned by 6 corporations, you are being told what they want you to hear.
They are consistent.
That should scare the pants off of you. That's why I don't watch CNN because I don't eat out of the toilet.
Yeah.
I don't watch MSNBC for the same reason. CNBC or whatever, CNBC. I don't watch any mainstream media, drive-by media, whatever you want to call it. I watch even very little Fox. So Fox is probably the best one out there. But you got to see it's like yes, that's as liberal as Chris Matthews. And I'll watch Blue Dog.
Roger, you're fading in and out on us from time to time. I don't know whether you're turning your head from the mic or you seem to be fading in and out a little.
Well, I'm using a Bluetooth if that makes any difference, which it might. And I don't think I have.
Now you're good now.
I don't think I'm good now. Okay, because I moved my phone when I did. So maybe that'll take a...
Roger, we have, I appreciate, for 17 years, I was after the pastors, trying to get them to engage the culture. And one of the things I found out at the end of that 17-year exercise is that there's another entity here that I was overlooking. And I'm going to suggest to you that you might take a closer look at it. And that is the family. Now, you're out in the mountain states, so I could talk to you about an Ohio State and Michigan rivalry. I don't know whether you'd be aware of that or not, but there's a UCLA and USC rivalry. And it's kind of like if you're a pastor and you're a USC coach, but all your players are UCLA fans, it's going to be difficult to motivate them to do the right thing. And one of the problems we have in America today, and I think the biggest problem we have in America today, is the lack of family structure. And I'm talking natural structure, one man, one woman, biological children, lifelong committed relationship. And another key is lack of male leadership in those families, which is probably the biggest drawback to what we face as a nation and what pastors face in their congregation. In other words, if you don't have a congregation that's on the same page that you're on, they're in the right church, but the wrong pew. If they're not there, it's very difficult. And I'm not letting pastors off the hook totally, okay? But I am saying they have a problem. They have personnel in those pews that aren't doing their jobs. And I don't know how pastors get them motivated given the current Me Too environment, especially for the men, where, well, if you're a man, you let the woman take over. And it's caused all kinds of problems. We flattened what should be a God, Jesus Christ, man, woman, children structure we flattened a vertical structure into a horizontal one, which has happened historically, by the way, and those nations didn't do too well. How do we help the pastors, or should we even bother to try to help the pastors get those families motivated?
Well, the problem is, if the pastor isn't motivated, the pew's not going to be motivated.
Okay.
So it's the pastor that has to do the motivation. The spirit that's on the pastor gets on the people. That's just the way it is. And as we stated, talked about a little bit earlier in the program, the pastor is the problem. In 2005, I tried to put a meeting together in Colorado, and I'm in the Denver metropolitan area, so we got a ton of churches.
You do.
You do. So I put out an invitation, and I brought in a keynote speaker who was one of our state congressmen at the time. No, he was a U.S. congressman at the time, Tom Tancredo. He was my keynote speaker, and one of our state senators, who happened to be an ordained minister, heard about the meeting and called me and said, "May I attend?" And well, heck yeah. So, I had him come to the meeting, and I let him say a few things too. But what my intent was to remind, if you will, the pastors of their role in the political arena. And in the process of putting this meeting together, some I just, sent out a letter of invitation with a follow-up phone call, and some I visited face-to-face. One of the pastors that I visited face-to-face basically said, well, we've got we're a 501c3. We're not allowed to be involved in politics, which is an outright lie. You can. There's limitations to it, yes.
Is this the pastor or was a government like a House of Representatives or a senator that you're talking about?
No, this was a pastor that I went to go see.
Okay.
And he said, we're a 501c3, and we can't be involved in politics, and blah blah blah. And he tried to wiggle his way out of the thing. And he said, I'm perfectly happy with the way it is set up now, which means he didn't have to be involved in the politics.
Non-threatening.
The government didn't want him involved in the politics. And so he was happy to not be involved in the politics. So I told him, I said, well, I felt the same way too for quite a few years. And I was having a conversation, with the Holy Spirit one day about this, and I basically said the same thing. Well, this is the way the government's got set up, and I don't have a problem with it. And the Holy Spirit came back at me with, I do. And made the hair stand up on the back of my head.
Yeah.
And when I told that pastor that, he basically said, our meeting is over, goodbye.
Yeah.
And that was the attitude. 200 pastors were invited to this meeting. I had one pastor show up from Longmont, which is like 60, 70 miles away. I had a couple assistant pastors, a bunch of lay people. That was it. Nobody wanted, well, that's politics. We can't be involved in politics. I talked to one of the most influential pastors in the minority community in Denver.
Mm-hmm.
In a church, on the front pew of a church, and I brought up the meeting that we were going to have. And I'm telling you, I've never seen anything like it. The color went out of his face. I mean, he went white. And he just, no, that's politics. We don't do anything with politics. And he started scooting away from me like I had the plague or something. That is what's wrong in the pulpits in America today.
So how do we light the fire, brother? If it's, I mean, if you're, what you're saying is true, if it's just up to the pastors, if it's totally up to them, then we don't have, and excuse the pun, a prayer, from what I'm looking at.
There was a church in Colorado Springs, and I feel free enough to mention the church's name. It's called Church for All Nations. That pastor and I were involved in the same organization as far as I'm ordained under Rod Parsley in Columbus, Ohio, and he was affiliated with Rod Parsley and that organization. And he used to get my daily intelligence briefings,
right?
American Intelligence Report. And then one day he called me up and he said, this is this is really getting out of the realm of what the church, and I need to be concentrated on, the church and this and that and what have you. And I said, okay, well, you need to be reading this then. And he wanted to be taken off of the list. Then I heard about 7 years later that he had an epiphany and realized the church needed to be involved in the political arena. Made a complete 180 turnaround, lost half his congregation, but now he's got a bigger church than he had when he started. I don't remember what gave him that epiphany.
Delayed snaps.
But he went, he took a step and turned around and started going the other direction. And he is up to his eyebrows in the political arena now. He incessantly catches flack for it. But the man stands his ground, and he won't back down. Now, some of the things that turned him around was a few people in his congregation.
Ah, good.
But he was also a man that paid attention to what was going on around him. And he could see the absolute need for the church to be involved. There are so many people. I've attended churches that you wouldn't even know there was a presidential election going on.
That would be your average church. This is B.J. Edwards along Mr. Anderson, your last call. We're speaking with Roger Angis, who is the founder of buildingtruth.org. He does have a daily email that he sends out. I'd highly recommend you subscribe to that. We've been talking about the church, its role or lack thereof in society. God created several institutions for the benefit of man, and Jesus Christ intends to be the head over all those institutions, including government. And the church did engage. That's why and how we got to where we are in America today. Roger, we've got July 4th coming up. And I don't know whether you have that handy, but you have a great prayer on that buildingthetruth.org. And if you don't have it, I could say it for you. But if you've got that handy, before we close out on the show today, I'd like for you to pray that with our audience. Again, if you don't have it, I can say it for you. But,
well, is that the prayer for our nation?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. I've got it right in front of me.
Okay. We've got a couple more minutes before we need you to do that. But in the meantime, okay. I really appreciate your heart with regards to the pastors. I wish you the best. At some time this week, I'm going to contact you and see if I can get a hold of that pastor, his name, and maybe try to contact him and talk to him about what we've been trying to do with MM United and with the natural family. I think we've got a good blend with the pastors who don't necessarily or feel uncomfortable going into politics, but at the same time they could promote the natural family, which is the same thing whether you like to believe it or not. It is the same thing, because if you're trying to protect the natural family, then you're trying to keep it away from homosexuality, you're trying to keep it away from divorce, from the pill, from dating, and all those things that tear away at the family structure, which I truly believe is the foundation of any nation, and it's also the foundation of any church. It's what churches are composed of. Go ahead.
Okay, I want to give some quick stats. It's right along the line of exactly what you're saying, and this involves the black community, but we got the same scenario in different percentages in the white community and in the Hispanic community and so forth, and that is 63% of pregnancies in the black community end up in abortion. 63%. 73% of all pregnancies in the black community, 73% of all live births in the black community are into a single parent family. Those stats ought to scare the pants off of us. That is, you're talking about the lack of the father figure, the male involvement in a man-woman relationship, a legitimate man-woman relationship. I mean, this is the epitome of it. This 63% goes into abortion. I mean, that's self-inflicted genocide.
That's great way to put that.
And the black community, the Congressional Black Caucus, demands that they have the right to do that. And that's all that is self-inflicted genocide. And we have similar stats, maybe not quite so high, but we have similar stats in the white community, in the brown community, and whatever. We have allowed this thing to happen. And it's got to stop. They say, well, that baby isn't a, it's not Yeah. Well, you can't destroy an eagle's egg because there's an eagle in that egg. Well, you've got to be an idiot to think it's going to be a chicken or, a dog or something else. If the eagle laid the egg, there's an eagle in that thing. And whatever stage it happens to be in, it's still an eagle. Well, the only thing an egg is an external womb. So if it's an eagle in the egg, if you got something growing in your womb, it's going to be a human being. It's not a massive tissues. It's not and we've lost that identity.
Roger Angis
and we need to get that back.
Is the founder of buildingthetruth.org. Roger, and to all you, have a great 4th of July. Roger, would you pray us out of here today?
Okay, I'll gladly do that. But Father, we ask you to bless and heal our land. We pray for this nation, that we will humbly and wholeheartedly serve you. We pray that as a nation we shall have no other gods before you, that we will not bow down ourselves to any idol or image, that we shall not take your name in vain, that we shall keep the Sabbath day holy, that we will honor our father and our mother, that we shall not kill, we shall not steal, we shall not commit adultery or bear false witness against our neighbors, that we will not covet anything that is our neighbor's, and that the fear of the Lord would be in all of the inhabitants of this nation. We thank you, Father, that you are revealing to the people of this nation that you are bringing this nation back to its foundational roots. And I thank you that whether they are elected or appointed, that they, and if they are hindering that process or opposed to your righteousness, that you are exposing them and removing them. And I thank you that with each election between now and the time that Jesus returns, that we will see that the ungodly and the unrighteous be removed from office and be replaced with godly, righteous, spirit-filled men and women of God. We pray that as a nation that we will hide your word in our hearts, and that we might not sin against you, and that we will walk by faith and not by sight, and that we will love you with all of our hearts and our soul, on our mind and our strength, and that our neighbors is ourselves, and that we would diligently obey your voice and cleave to you. For you are our life and the length of our days. And Father, without you, we can do nothing. Grant our request according to 2 Chronicles 7:14, that when we cry out to you, that you will come and heal our land. And we pray this in your mighty name, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Roger Angis. Philippians 4:8. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. Thank you all for listening in today. Have a great 4th of July, and pledge allegiance to the family.
Amen.
Join us Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern for Last Call with BJ Edwards on WTVOradio.com.